Our neighborhood is a new town that has just been built. A new town is just a small town with a few apartments, but it has everything you need. Especially, my favorite place in my neighborhood is the quiet river road. There are not many people passing by, so you can enjoy a pleasant walk during the day or at night. However, if you take a walk along the river at night, you sometimes come across strange things. If I had encountered them during the day, I would have passed them by without much thought, but the time of night instills strange fear into even insignificant shapes. In particular, the fear becomes clearer on days when it rains. There was a man running backwards tonight as well. I don't know if it's a man or a lady because he's wearing a black hood, but he's always been exercising at this time past 12 o'clock at night. He ran backwards with all his might without even looking back, but there was no hesitation, as if there were eyes on the back of his head. It was a natural yet strange movement, as if a person running forward was filmed and then played in reverse. One day, I greeted a man who was running backwards, and he only turned the black back of his head towards me and then went on his way again. For some reason it felt like the black back of my head was looking at me, so I never said hello again. However, since that day, the man running backwards has turned his black back towards me whenever he runs. It seemed like an ominous greeting. If you pass the man running backwards, you will see a swaying tree. It is a thin tree standing in the middle of the stream, and it always twisted and swayed even in windless weather. It was unpleasant to see the wriggling look like a insect-like centipede writhing. In fact, it was too thin to be criticized, and rather, it looked like a tall and slender person dancing. However, at this hour past 12 o'clock at night, isn't there anyone who goes into the cold water and dances? If you look closely, you might be able to identify the swaying tree, but for some reason, the wavy shape seemed to tempt me to enter the water, so I quickly passed it by. Underneath the dark overpass stands a game of statues scarecrow. It was a place where scarecrows of various shapes made through a resident contest were standing, and among them, there was one creepy-looking scarecrow. It was a scarecrow with long black hair and a white robe. It was so impressive that I turned around every time I passed it, and every time I turned around and looked at the scarecrow, it seemed to be getting closer to me little by little. One day, I was passing under the overpass, looking straight at the scarecrow, and I blinked for a moment and the scarecrow was almost right in front of my eyes. Even though the face wasn't drawn, I felt like I could see the eerie expression of the scarecrow looking at me. After passing the overpass, the width of the river widens. On the other side of the river, there was a large open space where children were always running around. Even though the children were just running around the empty lot, they laughed innocently at what was so good. They laughed at regular intervals, making regular sounds. It seemed to stay the same even after a few hours. The riverside on the other side was connected to the nearby hills, so it was a little dangerous place for children to play at this late hour after 12 o'clock at night. One day, I shouted to the children on the other side to go home because it was late, but the steady sound of laughter suddenly stopped and the children suddenly disappeared. I started out on the road again, thinking that the children had just gone home, but after walking a little, I heard the constant laughter of the children behind me again. When you reach the end of the promenade, you will see a slightly unpleasant scenery. Garbage that someone secretly threw away is drifting away. The black plastic bag was not tightly tied, so the contents inside leaked out. It was dark, so it was hard to see, but it looked like a thick liquid in a lump of organic matter. Sometimes it smells fishy and sour, so you have to cover your nose and pass by. When I had just moved in, I was so obsessed with a sense of duty that I even lifted a garbage bag with a long stick, but I never did that again when I saw the water-soaked fingers inside the bag. The smell I smelled that day seemed to still linger in my mind. At the end of the trail is a small water source. At the water source, a mineral spring was prepared for those who finished their walk. However, when looking at the water quality inspection table posted next to the water spring, it was always unsuitable. Looking at the ingredient list, E. coli or general bacteria were not detected, but the iron and nitrogen components were excessively high. Sometimes, I was so thirsty that I turned on the faucet, ignoring the ingredient list, and red rusty water flowed out. It smelled fishy and tasted like iron. The more I drank, the more I became thirsty, so it tasted like water that I didn't want to look at again. But strangely, every time I come here, I get to taste the water again. The scariest thing about night walks is having to go back the way I came. The scenery on the way back was quite different from when I came. The only scenery that was not different was the strange ones. A mineral spring with red water, unidentifiable garbage, children's laughter, a creepy scarecrow, something wriggling in the water, a black back running upside down. They were always waiting for me at the same place.